In the year 3050, humanity had finally reached its pinnacle. The stars, once distant and untouchable, were now interconnected through a vast web of colonized planets and thriving trade routes. The once tiny species had built a galactic empire that spanned thousands of light years, stretching across the Milky Way like a sprawling tapestry. Yet, at the heart of this triumph, something insidious was brewing. Aboard the colossal ship Elysium, Captain Selene Rayner stood at the observation deck, gazing out at the starlit expanse. The Elysium wasn't just any ship. It was humanity's flagship, a testament to their technological prowess, and the first of its kind to be capable of faster-than-light travel across the entire galaxy. It had been almost a century since Earth had first ventured into space, and now, the people of Earth were masters of the stars, controlling entire systems and bending time and space to their will. But Selene Rayner had a feeling, a nagging sensation deep in her gut, that things were about to change in ways no one could predict. Selene's thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime. The ship's AI, Ether, had detected an anomaly. "Captain," Ether's calm voice echoed in her earpiece. "An unidentified object has appeared at the edge of the Centauri system. Its trajectory suggests it's on a collision course with our route." The Centauri system wasn't exactly uncharted. Humanity had established several colonies there. The sudden appearance of an unknown object, however, was unsettling. There were no reports of new ships or vessels coming from that region. The only entities left unexplored in the galaxy were ancient ruins, dormant relics of long-extinct species. Nothing to worry about, or so it seemed. "Set course for the Centauri system. Inform Fleet Command and prepare to intercept," Selene commanded, her voice steady. Even as she gave the orders, a strange unease gripped her. As Elysium glided toward the Centauri system, a chorus of alarms suddenly rang out across the ship. "Shields are failing," the chief engineer reported, his voice tinged with panic. "Whatever it is, it's emitting a signal. It's disrupting our systems. Shield generators are offline, weapon systems malfunctioning." Selene's heart raced as she rushed to the command center. "What kind of signal?" "We're still analyzing it, Captain," the chief engineer replied. "But whatever it is, it's not human." The enormity of the situation began to sink in. The human race had never encountered anything they couldn't conquer. No alien species, no force in the galaxy had ever posed a serious threat. Now, in the vastness of the stars, they had found something beyond their understanding. And it was coming for them. The object emerged from the darkness of space like a shadow, its massive form slowly coming into view on the visual display. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, an enormous vessel, its surface covered in strange, alien symbols. But what struck Selene most was the energy emanating from it. It wasn't the familiar pulse of human-made technology, nor was it the chaotic hum of alien machinery. It felt ancient and dangerous. "What is that?" Selene muttered under her breath. Suddenly, the ship's AI flared to life. "Captain, I am detecting a message. It is being broadcast on all frequencies. It is," Ether hesitated, as if processing the message. "It is human." Selene felt a chill crawl up her spine. "Human," she repeated. "Yes, Captain," Ether confirmed. "The message is a warning." A screen flashed to life before her eyes. The words that appeared on the screen were as ancient as they were chilling. "We built this galaxy, and now we are the ones who will tear it apart." The message hung in the air for a moment, its weight settling over the crew like an oppressive fog. Who could have sent this message? And why? The fact that it was human, yet so foreign, made it all the more disturbing. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Selene ordered, her voice cold and commanding. She knew they were no longer in control of the situation. Humanity's empire, once so certain of its dominance, was suddenly facing a force unlike anything it had ever encountered. They had built this galaxy, but now, perhaps, they were about to witness its destruction. As the Elysium sped toward the object, the unknown vessel's surface began to glow with a pulsating light. A ripple of energy washed over the ship, and for a brief moment, Celine felt a cold hand of dread wrap around her heart. She didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. The galaxy that humanity had so carefully constructed was about to unravel. And the people who had built it would soon realize they had not been its creators, but merely its stewards. And the time had come for the galaxy to be reclaimed. The tension aboard Elysium was palpable. The crew could sense it, a cold weight that pressed down on them, suffocating their confidence. Captain Celine Rayner stood at the center of the command bridge, her eyes locked on the massive alien vessel that loomed ahead, casting a long shadow over her ship. The words, "We built this galaxy, and now we are the ones who will tear it apart," echoed in her mind, reverberating through her thoughts like a drumbeat of impending doom. "We need to know more about this ship," Celine said, her voice steady despite the storm swirling in her chest. "Get me everything we can on its technology. What's keeping our systems offline?" "Aye, Captain," Lieutenant Juno, the ship's lead analyst, responded quickly, fingers flying over her console. She worked in silence for a moment, before her eyes widened. I don't know how to explain this, Captain. It's as if their technology is rewriting ours. Our shields, weapons, and communications, they're all based on human systems, but something is interfacing with them from the outside." Celine's pulse quickened. "Are you saying it's controlling us?" "Not controlling, but manipulating. It's like trying to hold back an ocean with a dam. No matter what we do, their technology is breaking through. I'm not sure how much longer we'll be able to hold on." "Can you cut off the signal?" she demanded. Lieutenant Juno grimaced. "We're trying, Captain. But the signal is unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's not just some random interference. It's intelligent, almost alive." The unsettling nature of the situation began to settle over Celine like a thick fog. Human technology, even when stretched to its limits, had always been a force of dominance. Yet now, something far beyond their understanding was at play. She had no idea what kind of entity could command such power. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the ship. "Captain, we have incoming," shouted Commander Aris, the ship's weapons officer. "Multiple unknown energy signatures. It's not just the ship anymore. There are drones, small craft, disembarking from the vessel. They're headed right toward us." Celine's heart dropped. "Shields up. Prepare for combat," she ordered. The crew scrambled into action, but Celine knew in her gut that their weapons were useless against this alien force. On the main view screen, the drones came into view, sleek, silver, and unnaturally fast. They darted toward Elysium with impossible precision, their forms shifting like liquid as they navigated the space between the two ships. It was as if the very laws of physics bent and twisted around them, allowing them to move in ways that defied any human understanding. "We're locked on to one of the drones, Captain," Commander Aris reported, his voice strained. "Weapons are ready to fire." "Do it," Celine ordered without hesitation. A barrage of plasma bolts shot toward one of the approaching drones. But the moment the energy struck its hull, the drone pulsed with a strange, iridescent glow, absorbing the shots like a sponge drinking in water. Within seconds, the plasma fire dissipated, and the drone shot forward, faster than before, its trajectory now headed directly for Elysium. "What the hell?" Aris muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. "They're adapting." As the drone drew nearer, its surface shimmered, and an unsettling, mechanical hum filled the bridge. Then, with a violent crackle of energy, it detonated right against the ship's hull, sending a shockwave of electromagnetic interference cascading through Elysium. The lights flickered, and the ship shuddered under the blast. "We've lost power to the forward sections," yelled the chief engineer. "We're drifting." Celine's grip tightened on the console. The crew was doing everything they could, but the alien drones were more than just formidable. They were evolving before their eyes. Every strike, every attempt to fight back was met with an immediate counterattack. Whatever these things were, they were not merely invincible. They were intelligent, adaptive, and terrifying. "Get me a report on the alien ship." Celine barked. "What's happening with their vessel?" Juno's voice trembled as she answered. "Captain, I don't think they're just attacking. It's like they're broadcasting something. A signal. A message. But it's not like before. It's stronger, more persistent. More persistent? Celine repeated, brow furrowing. What does that mean? It's not just an isolated message anymore, Captain. It's spreading. It's reaching all our colonies, all our systems. It's like they're calling out to something. Or someone. The word sank in. The alien ship wasn't just a threat to Elysium. It was a threat to everything humanity had built. The galaxy was under siege. But by who? And why? Suddenly, the ship's communication panel flickered to life. A voice, distorted but unmistakably human, crackled through the speakers. We built this galaxy, but now we must unmake it. The transmission cut off as abruptly as it had started, leaving only a silence thick with dread. Captain Rayner gritted her teeth. Prepare to fight back, she said. Whatever this is, humanity will not go down without a fight. But deep within her, she knew something had changed. The galaxy that humanity had so carefully crafted was unraveling, and they were no longer the masters of it. Now, they were just another part of the galaxy's long, forgotten past. The question wasn't whether they could fight back, it was whether they could survive long enough to understand what was happening. The Elysium drifted in the vast emptiness of space, powerless, its crew in a state of desperate readiness. The alien drones continued their relentless assault, their movements growing more fluid, more unpredictable. Every strike seemed calculated, as if the drones could anticipate every defensive move. It wasn't just warfare, it was a game of intellect, one that humanity had no chance of winning. Captain Celine Rayner paced the bridge, her mind spinning. The attack was far from over. They had only barely repelled the initial wave of drones, but already they had sustained critical damage to the ship's systems. Communications were down, most of the primary hull was breached, and the crew was already feeling the pressure of holding their ground against a foe that was unlike anything they had ever faced. The view screen flickered, showing the alien ship in the distance. It remained unmoving, like a dark monolith in space. But now, Celine knew that it wasn't just a ship, it was something more. It was a message, a harbinger, a reckoning. Captain, Lieutenant Juno called from her station, her voice tight with anxiety. I've been running simulations on the drones. We've made a horrible discovery. These things, they're not just machines. They're evolving. They're learning from every attack we launch, adapting their structure and tactics in real time. Celine's heart sank. Are you saying they're getting smarter? Exactly, Juno confirmed, her fingers hovering over the console. We've never encountered a weapon like this. Whatever's controlling them is a force we don't understand. I'm also starting to believe that it's not the ship. It's the message. It's a kind of signal, like a living entity, and it's embedded within the drones themselves. A chill ran down Celine's spine. A living signal? Think of it like a virus, Juno explained. But not just any virus. This is something sentient, something conscious. It's evolving in real time, shaping itself based on our reactions. If we continue to fight back, we're only strengthening it. Celine's thoughts raced. Humanity had spent centuries exploring, colonizing, and exploiting the galaxy. But all that progress, all that power, had led to this moment. They had built an empire, but now it seemed that the empire had outgrown them. Now, the very tools they had crafted to conquer the stars were turning against them. We need to stop it, Celine said, her voice calm but filled with resolve. Get me a plan to counteract the drones and that signal. Anything. We're not going down without a fight. The room was silent as Juno worked furiously, her fingers dancing over the console. There's one possible option, she said, hesitation clear in her voice. It's risky, and I can't guarantee it'll work, but we might be able to launch a counter-signal. If we can hijack the drone's communication system and disrupt the source of their adaptation, we might be able to sever the connection to whatever intelligence is controlling them. How? Celine asked. We can't even keep our own systems online. Juno's face was grim. We'll have to use the Elysium's internal network, bypassing the damaged external communication relays. If we can inject a disruptor pulse into their frequency, it might overload their systems. And if we fail? Celine asked. Juno met her gaze with quiet determination. Then we lose the ship. And everything with it. Celine took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. The galaxy they had been built on the idea that they were the masters of their destiny, that they could shape the stars to their will. But now they faced something that made their greatest achievements seem insignificant. She knew she had to act fast. They couldn't afford to wait. "Do it," she said, the words hard as steel. "Prepare the disruptor pulse." The crew scrambled to carry out her orders, and Celine felt a grim sense of inevitability settle over her. She didn't know what the future held, but she did know one thing for certain. Humanity was about to face a reckoning, one that might shatter everything they had built. But this wasn't the end. Not yet. As Juno worked to prepare the disruptor pulse, a new alarm rang out, louder and more insistent. The bridge fell into chaos as the consoles flickered with new data. Celine snapped her attention to the screen. "We've got company," Commander Aris said, voice tight. On the view screen, a new set of drones had emerged from the alien ship. These weren't like the previous ones. They were larger, more formidable, with jagged edges and glowing red cores. But what caught Celine's attention was something even more disturbing. They weren't just attacking. They were communicating. A massive energy pulse shot out from the alien vessel, and suddenly, Celine's console flashed with a new message. This one wasn't in the form of words. It was a wave of images, fragmented and distorted. They were flashes of distant stars, war-torn planets, and a lone figure standing against a backdrop of cosmic destruction. The images were terrifying, filled with a sense of loss and unfulfilled destiny. But there was one thing that became abundantly clear. This wasn't a warning. It was a message, a promise. "We built this galaxy. Now we will reclaim it," the words appeared on the screen, flickering like the remnants of an old signal. Celine's heart pounded. There was no escaping this. "We need to launch the disruptor now," Juno shouted. "If we don't..." Before she could finish, the ship lurched violently, as if the very fabric of space had been torn apart around them. The alien energy pulse struck Elysium again, this time tearing into the ship's core systems. Sparks flew, and the hull groaned under the assault. "We're losing control," the chief engineer shouted. "Hull integrity at 40%. Shields gone." "Captain," Juno called urgently. "The disruptor pulse is ready. We can still stop them, but we need to act fast." "Do it," Celine shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. Juno slammed her hand onto the activation panel, and a brilliant wave of energy shot through the ship, flaring out toward the drones and the alien vessel beyond. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. And then, as if the universe itself had taken a breath, everything went still. The drones stopped mid-flight. The alien vessel shimmered, as if it were blinking in and out of existence. And then, without warning, a massive shockwave rippled through space, causing everything to tremble in its wake. The disruptor pulse had hit its mark. But the battle was far from over. The galaxy was far from safe. And Celine knew that no matter what happened next, humanity's empire was about to change forever. The silence that followed the disruptor pulse was deafening. For a brief, fleeting moment, the crew of the Elysium believed they had won. The alien drones, once so aggressive and relentless, had ceased their attacks. The immense alien ship, which had loomed like a dark harbinger of doom, now hovered motionless in space. But the victory was fleeting. The moment was pregnant with an ominous stillness, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Celine Rayner stood frozen at the center of the command bridge, eyes scanning the empty void on the view screen, where the alien craft had been only seconds before. Her hand hovered over the console, as if expecting it to flare back to life at any moment, but it remained dark, silent. "What happened?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Juno, who had been monitoring the disruptor pulse's effects, was the first to speak. I'm not sure, Captain. It looks like we've overloaded their communication network. Their drones are in a kind of stasis, frozen for now. And the ship, it's gone." "Gone," Celine repeated, brow furrowing. "What do you mean gone?" Juno's fingers moved quickly over the console, as the screens flickered with incoming data. I think it vanished, Captain. Disappeared into a subspace pocket. It's like it was never there. I can't track it. The room fell into a stunned silence. The alien ship, the threat, was no longer present, but the implications of its disappearance were far from reassuring. It wasn't a retreat. It wasn't a simple failure of communication. The ship had vanished like a shadow, leaving behind only confusion and uncertainty. "We've only delayed them," Commander Aris said, his voice grim. "This isn't over. It's only a matter of time before they figure out how to regroup, rebuild." Celine nodded. "Prepare for another attack. Full battle readiness." But as she gave the orders, an uneasy thought crept into her mind. Something didn't add up. The galaxy wasn't just facing an alien invasion. It was facing an existential challenge. They hadn't just encountered a hostile force. They had confronted an intelligence far beyond anything humanity had ever anticipated. The ship, the drones, the strange messages, it was all part of a greater, more disturbing design. And if they had learned anything from this encounter, it was that they were not dealing with invaders. They were dealing with something much older, something that had been waiting, watching, for millennia. Suddenly, a new alarm blared, ripping through her thoughts. "Captain," Juno said, voice shaking. "I'm picking up a transmission, one that wasn't in the data we intercepted earlier. It's not from the alien ship, though. It's coming from Earth." Celine turned toward Juno, confusion wrinkling her brow. "Earth? But that's impossible. We're too far out, the signal would." "Just listen," Juno interrupted, her fingers racing across the console to amplify the transmission. The voice that came through the speakers was chilling, distorted, but unmistakably human. "This is not a warning. This is a declaration. We have seen what you have built. We see what you have destroyed. Now you will face what you have ignored. The architects of the galaxy are returning, and you will not be able to stop them." The voice paused, as if taking a breath. "The galaxy has always belonged to the old ones. And now it's time for the reckoning. Prepare yourself." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving only an eerie silence behind. For a long moment, the bridge remained still, the crew unsure of how to react to what they had just heard. It was as if the very fabric of reality had twisted in on itself. Celine was the first to break the silence. "That was no ordinary message. Who sent it?" Juno shook her head. "I don't know, Captain. The signal originated from Earth, but it wasn't anything from our comm networks. It's ancient. It's like they've tapped into something deep, something buried for centuries." "Who are they?" Aris asked, his voice full of concern. "What are the old ones?" "Whatever they are, they're not from a galaxy we know," Celine said quietly. "And they've been watching us all along." As she spoke, Celine's mind raced. She had always believed humanity was the pinnacle of evolution, the dominant species in the galaxy. They had built this empire from nothing, reaching out across the stars and claiming them as their own. But now, as she looked out across the void, she began to question everything they thought they understood. The aliens they had encountered, the drones, the strange, cryptic messages. It was all pointing to something larger, something more profound. Humanity had built the galaxy, but it was clear now, they had never truly owned it. They had been players in a game much older than themselves, a game controlled by forces they couldn't possibly comprehend. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Celine ordered, snapping back into command mode. "We don't know what we're up against yet, but we need to be ready for anything." Juno hesitated before responding. "Captain, I don't think it's just about being ready anymore. We're dealing with something we can't fight. Not like this. Not with our weapons. This is something different. It's beyond anything we've ever encountered." Celine looked her crew in the eyes, her expression hardening. "Then we'll figure it out, one way or another. We're not running." The universe had always been vast, unknowable, a mystery stretching out in every direction. But for the first time, Celine realized humanity had reached the edges of that mystery, and what they found there was far more terrifying than they had ever imagined. Somewhere out there in the darkness, the old ones were watching, waiting. And humanity, for all its achievements, was now a mere speck in their vast, ancient game. The Elysium wasn't just facing an enemy. It was facing the end of an era. The galaxy they had built was beginning to tear itself apart, and Selene Rayner knew that no matter what they did next, the future of humanity would never be the same again. The Elysium drifted in the silence of space, its hull battered, its systems barely hanging on. Captain Selene Rayner stood at the bridge, her gaze locked on the black void outside the view screen. She could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her, the enormity of what they had discovered suffocating the air around her. The message had been clear. The architects of the galaxy are returning, and with it, a creeping realization gnawed at her. Humanity was no longer the master of its own fate. The galaxy they had painstakingly built was nothing more than an edifice, erected upon ancient bones, now crumbling under the weight of something much older. Captain, Lieutenant Juno's voice pulled her from her thoughts. We're picking up an anomaly. It's not like the alien ship. It's different. Selene turned toward her, brow furrowed. What do you mean different? Juno didn't answer immediately, her fingers flying over the console. Then she spoke again, more urgently. It's a mass. No, it's not just a mass. It's a distortion. Something's warping space itself. The lights flickered. A low hum reverberated through the ship's hull. A crackling sound filled the bridge. Then a voice emerged from the ship's communication system. One that wasn't from Earth. One that wasn't even human. We are the architects, the voice said, deep and resonant, as if it had been forged in the very core of the universe. You have trespassed in the domain of the Ancient Ones, and now the price will be paid. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, no one on the bridge could speak. Selene's heart raced as she realized what was happening. This was no mere communication. This was a declaration, and the implications were terrifying. We built the galaxy, but it was never yours to claim, the voice continued. You are children who do not understand the forces you play with. You will see the price of your hubris. Your empire will fall, just as it always has. The voice fell silent, and then, as if responding to an unseen command, the Elysium shuddered violently. The crew was thrown off balance as the ship's hull groaned under an unseen pressure. Alarms screamed through the ship. What is it? Selene shouted, gripping her chair as the ship lurched again. What's happening to us? Captain. Juno's voice was frantic. We're being pulled. A gravitational force, but it's not natural. It's distorting space itself. On the view screen, the black void of space began to ripple. The stars were no longer twinkling. They were warping, bending in unnatural patterns, stretching toward an invisible point in the distance. And at the center of that distortion, a massive, spherical structure appeared. It seemed to be made of pure darkness, an object so immense that it seemed to absorb the very light around it, like a black hole materializing out of nothingness. No way, Commander Aris whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. That thing, what is it? It looks like a construct. Selene's eyes narrowed. Not just any construct. A weapon. The Elysium continued to be pulled closer, dragged toward the spherical object that had appeared from the warp in space. It was as if the very laws of physics were being rewritten before their eyes. We can't outrun it, Aris said, trying to pull up evasive maneuvers. This force, it's not just gravitational. It's pulling us in, dragging us to that thing. Whatever it is, it's alive. Prepare yourselves, the voice spoke again, its tone even more chilling than before. The architects will return. The galaxy will burn. The price will be paid. Selene's blood ran cold. The ship's systems flickered again, struggling against the immense power pulling them toward the sphere. It wasn't just an attack, it was a final, crushing blow, a force designed to bring everything to its knees. This wasn't just an invasion. It was an annihilation. Juno, Selene said, her voice steady despite the rising panic in her chest. How long do we have? Juno's fingers danced over the console as she analyzed the data. Maybe 15 minutes, Captain. We're being dragged into a singularity. I think it's a device. But it's not just any device. This is an ancient weapon. Tell me how to stop it, Celine demanded. I don't know if we can stop it, Juno said, her voice quivering. The distortion in space is too strong. We're being pulled into something we don't even understand. This might be how they control the galaxy. They've built this thing to keep everything in line. And we're its next target. Celine's mind raced. They had no time. No weapons. Nothing to fight back with. They were nothing more than prey being hunted in the dark. We need to reach the heart of it, Celine said, thinking on her feet. If this is a weapon, there has to be a core, some sort of weakness. And if there isn't? Aris asked, his voice low. Then we die trying. The crew scrambled into action, preparing for the impossible. They had no way of knowing what awaited them inside the heart of the sphere, but one thing was clear. They could not let this ancient force have its way with the galaxy. They had to fight, even if that fight led them into the abyss. The Elysium was dragged inexorably toward the black, looming sphere, the gravitational forces growing stronger with every passing second. The stars bent and twisted, the space around them warping in a way that defied every known law of physics. But just as Celine thought the ship would be crushed by the force, a new sound filled the air, a hum, soft but persistent. And then, as if responding to that hum, something began to happen. The sphere pulsed. For a brief moment, there was a flash of light, a shimmering distortion. And then, the ship lurched violently. We're inside, Juno gasped, staring at the screen. They had crossed the threshold. They were inside the weapon itself. The view screen shifted. The Elysium had entered the heart of the sphere, and what they saw inside defied explanation. It was not a single weapon. It was a network of interconnected forms, pulsing with the energy of 1,000 stars, a vast, incomprehensible machine that stretched across the entire interior of the sphere. Captain, Juno whispered. This is their power. This is how they control everything. All of it. The galaxy, it's all connected. Celine's heart skipped a beat. Then we need to shut it down. Now. But as the crew braced for whatever they would face next, Celine couldn't shake the feeling that they had just entered the very maw of something far greater than they could ever imagine. And the true nature of the architects was about to be revealed. The interior of the sphere was like nothing Captain Celine Rayner had ever imagined. The walls of the vast, pulsing chamber seemed to stretch into infinity, made of shimmering, shifting dark matter. Lines of energy threaded through the space like veins, weaving into complex patterns, pulsating in eerie synchronization. The very air vibrated with an alien energy, something ancient, yet disturbingly alive. The Elysium drifted at the center of this vast, otherworldly structure, its systems hanging by a thread. The hum of the sphere, deep and resonant, felt like a heartbeat, a rhythm that was both foreign and ominous. The ship's crew stood in a hushed, tense silence, their eyes fixed on the glowing data readouts, as they tried to make sense of the unfathomable scene unfolding before them. Juno was at her console, her hands shaking as she frantically analyzed the readings. This is impossible, Captain," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "The power here, it's beyond anything we've ever encountered. It's like the sphere itself is the source of the power. But this technology, it predates anything we could ever imagine. It's not even a ship or a station. This is a mind." "A mind?" Aris echoed, disbelief in his tone. "Are you telling me this whole thing is alive?" Juno nodded grimly. "It's more than alive. It's a consciousness, a sentient intelligence that's been growing for millennia. This isn't just a weapon. It's a network that controls not just this structure, but everything connected to it. The entire galaxy. It's been manipulating everything, from the stars to the civilizations that built themselves upon it." Captain Rayner's stomach turned. "You're saying, this thing has been controlling us? For how long?" Juno's fingers hovered over her console. "It's been watching, evolving, shaping everything since the dawn of the galaxy. The alien drones, the message we intercepted, they were part of the process. It's been communicating with us, testing us. We were never meant to win." Celine's mind raced. The architects. The message. The ancient, incomprehensible force that had been behind everything. The galaxy they had built, all their triumphs, their conquests, their wars. Had they all been part of this alien intelligence's grand design? Were they merely players in a game they didn't even know they were part of? Before she could respond, a sudden, deep resonance shook the ship, rattling through the hull with force. The sphere's reacting, Juno said, looking at her screen with alarm. It's scanning us. A cold, unnatural silence followed, and then the same deep voice from before echoed through the bridge, only this time it was not just a message, it was a presence. You stand at the edge of the architect's domain, the voice said, its tone far colder and more powerful than before. You have trespassed into our realm. You have awakened us from our slumber. And now, you will learn the price of your defiance. The voice was everywhere. It wasn't coming from the ship's speakers, it was inside their minds. It was speaking directly to them, as if it had always known they were coming. The galaxy has always belonged to us, the voice continued, unhurried, as though it had all the time in the universe. From the beginning of all things, we have shaped and guided the stars, the forces of life and death. You were never meant to rise, to build empires, to challenge the natural order. You are nothing more than a fleeting thought in the great design, a disruption. Celine felt the words sink into her, like an icy wave crashing over her thoughts. It was as though the very fabric of reality was being torn apart in front of her. The Elysium felt as if it were suspended in the void between life and death, and Celine knew that if the architects had their way, they would be obliterated, along with everything humanity had ever built. The voice seemed to twist around her thoughts, distorting her perception of time and space. You were never meant to build this galaxy. You were never meant to master the stars. You do not understand the power you have unleashed. It has always been ours, and now it will return to its rightful owners. We will reorder the stars, and all things will be as they were. Juno's hands flew over the controls again, but her face was pale with fear. I'm seeing something, a pattern. It's as if the entire structure is responding to the voice. It's not just communicating. It's rewriting space. Celine's pulse quickened as a new realization settled in her mind. This is it, isn't it? This is the reckoning, the return of the architects. They're not just reclaiming the galaxy. They're going to reshape it entirely. The voice responded, its presence now overwhelming. Yes, Captain Raynor. You are beginning to understand. But it is too late. You have awakened the architects, and now we will undo the corruption your species has wrought. The galaxy will be reborn. A pulse of energy rippled from the heart of the sphere, and the Elysium shook violently. Panels exploded in sparks. The lights flickered. Celine's crew scrambled, their faces marked by terror. But Celine stood firm, her gaze fixed on the shimmering black walls of the sphere. It is time for the price to be paid. The voice whispered, more insistent this time. Juno's voice broke through the haze of impending doom. Captain, the sphere, it's opening. The walls of the sphere around them began to disintegrate, and through the tear in space, Celine could see what lay beyond. A sea of stars, hundreds, thousands, shifting in impossible formations, swirling toward one central point. The very fabric of space itself seemed to warp around the singularity at the center of the sphere. This is the beginning of the end, the voice intoned. The architect's return, and the galaxy will be ours once more. For a moment, the galaxy felt as though it were on the verge of being unmade, as if reality itself was crumbling in the face of an unstoppable force. Everything humanity had built, everything they had fought for, was being torn apart. Celine's heart pounded, but in the depths of the swirling darkness, a thought crystallized. There was no time left to ask why or how. They had to act. They had to stop the architects now, or be consumed by their return. Prepare the disruptor pulse, Celine ordered, her voice sharp. Juno, do you have a connection to their systems? Can you target this thing? I think so, Juno said, her voice strained with effort. But the power is overwhelming. The sphere is alive with energy, too much for us to fight. We can't just fight it head on. We need to attack its core. Shut it down. Then we go for the heart, Celine said, her eyes cold with resolve. We end this here, or we die trying. The Elysium plunged into the heart of the sphere, and the final battle for the galaxy began. But Celine couldn't shake the thought that haunted her. In this war, there was no victory without sacrifice. The architects were the beginning and the end. You said. The Elysium hurtled deeper into the heart of the architect's ancient weapon, the walls of the sphere dissolving into the very fabric of space itself. Outside, the stars twisted, pulled by the unfathomable forces at play. The ship's hull groaned under the stress, and the lights flickered. But the crew, battered and determined, pushed forward with a single unyielding goal: to stop the architects from reclaiming their control over the galaxy. Celine Rayner stood at the helm, her knuckles white from gripping the command console. She could feel the immense gravity of the situation, the weight of their last hope pressing down on her with every passing second. The sphere was alive, pulsing with energy, an unimaginable consciousness that had guided and shaped the galaxy for millennia. And now it was bent on unmaking everything humanity had fought to build. Juno, Celine's voice was steady, but the urgency was unmistakable. We have one shot at this. Can you get us to the core? I'm trying, Juno replied, her voice strained. Her hands flew over the console, but the ship's systems were fighting her at every turn. The gravitational fields within the sphere were warping everything. There's too much interference. The ship's systems are on the verge of collapse. The sphere's core is pulling us in faster than we can respond. The tremors running through the ship grew stronger, the space around them warping into twisted shapes. The walls of the sphere were no longer solid. They were fluid, ever-shifting, like the thoughts of a vast, ancient mind. It was as if the entire structure was alive, aware of their presence, and it was fighting back. We can't stop now, Celine said through gritted teeth. If we don't destroy this thing, everything we've built, everything humanity stands for, will be wiped from existence. We have to find a way. Captain, Commander Aris spoke up from behind, his voice tense. There's something else. I'm detecting multiple energy signatures converging on our position. Celine's heart skipped a beat. More drones. No, Aris said, his voice grim. These aren't drones. These are manifestations of the architects. I think we've triggered some kind of defense system. They're coming for us. The air on the bridge grew colder, as if the very atmosphere had shifted in response to their predicament. On the view screen, the walls of the sphere seemed to ripple with malevolent energy, and there, just beyond the distortions, appeared strange, shadowy shapes, alien figures incomprehensible in their form. They flickered in and out of existence, like ghosts, their presence a manifestation of the architects themselves. Each one was an echo of the vast intelligence that governed this weapon. The figures began to move toward the Elysium, their shapes shifting and writhing in ways that defied logic. It was clear that they were not just attacking, they were watching, studying the crew, their eyes piercing, almost sentient. They were as much part of the architect's consciousness as the sphere itself. Juno's voice broke through the tension. Captain, the core, it's just ahead. If we can get close enough, I can deploy the disruptor pulse directly into it. It should overload the sphere's systems. Do it, Celine ordered. We don't have time. The Elysium lunged forward, hurtling toward the center of the sphere. The space around them folded and bent in impossible ways, and with every passing moment, it felt as if reality itself were unraveling. But Celine's focus was razor-sharp. They had come this far. They would not fail now. The manifestations of the architects moved in, coalescing into forms that seemed to bleed through the very walls of the ship, their hands reaching toward the crew, attempting to invade their minds. One of the figures appeared in front of Celine, a swirling mass of shadow and light, its form vaguely humanoid, but its presence was terrifyingly alien. Captain Rayner, the figure's voice echoed inside her mind. You cannot win. This galaxy was never meant for your kind. It was always ours. You are the interlopers, the trespassers. You will not rewrite the natural order. Celine's pulse thundered in her ears, but her resolve remained unwavering. Then we'll fight, until the end. The figure's laugh was a low, chilling sound, reverberating in her mind. The end has already come. You are too late. We are eternal. Before the figure could advance, Celine drew her sidearm, aiming directly at the apparition. The energy from the weapon flared in the dim light, striking the shadowy figure, but it passed right through, like shooting into smoke. The manifestation flickered and vanished, but the threat was far from over. More figures were closing in. "Juno," Celine shouted, her voice sharp. "How much longer?" "I'm almost there," Juno replied, her voice tight with strain. "I just need a little more time." But the sphere seemed to fight back with a growing intensity. The gravitational fields became more erratic, warping the ship's trajectory, and the power of the architects was pushing harder against them. The figures surrounding the ship were multiplying, and their presence was beginning to overwhelm the crew. Then, from the center of the ship, there came a blast of blinding light, a shockwave that rocked the bridge. Everything went silent for a split second, and then everything collapsed. The ship's systems flickered, and the artificial gravity failed. Celine grabbed the arm of her chair, trying to steady herself. The very air felt heavy, as if space itself had been turned inside out. The core of the sphere was now within reach, but it felt like the final moments of a long, drawn-out battle for survival. "Juno," Celine shouted, her voice a lifeline. Now, with trembling hands, Juno activated the disruptor pulse. A blinding beam of energy shot from the Elysium's core, cutting through the distorted space toward the heart of the architect's weapon. Time seemed to stretch and warp, and the ship trembled as the pulse tore through the sphere systems. For a heartbeat, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, an explosion of light, a shuddering shockwave that sent the ship spinning. For a moment, nothing made sense. There was no sound, no sensation, just a vast, infinite silence. And then, suddenly, there was a shift. The walls of the sphere, once living and undulating, collapsed. The twisted structures faded, and the ghostly manifestations of the architects dissipated into nothingness. The gravitational distortion ceased, and the space around them returned to something resembling normalcy. The Elysium was free. But as the crew steadied themselves, bruised and battered, Celine knew that the battle was not over. They had defeated the architect's weapon, but the architects themselves were still out there, lurking in the deep void, waiting. And this victory, though hard-earned, was only the beginning. Humanity had built this galaxy, but now it would have to fight to keep it. The final reckoning had only just begun.